Hello, my name's Trishna. I'm 17 years old, and I used to be what you would call a scatterbrain. My friends know me for misplacing my bottle. I have these moments where I walk into a room and I'm just like, why did I come here in the first place? Or sometimes I'm looking for something like my pencil case or something, and I have to circle the entire house before I come back to my table, where I originally started, only to find it sitting in the center right there. How many of you have the same problem? Yay. Okay. But when it comes to things like songs or dialogues from a movie or random facts, my memory suddenly becomes flawless. Like, for instance, I remember this fact. In almost all languages of the world, in many languages of the world, the word for pineapple is ananas, except in English. So in Hindi, it's ananas. In Indonesian, it's nanas. In French, it's ananas, except in English, which is pineapple. It's a completely useless fact, but I remember it super clearly. So that got me thinking, why is it? Why is it that I can remember things that don't matter, like medulla oblongata, which is a word I will probably never use, but I can't remember something so simple as to not leave my bottle behind. So I did a little introspection where I took the things I could remember and I couldn't remember, and I compared them a bit, and finally I condensed it down to a matter of boxes. So this is a box. For instance, today, when I was coming to school, my mom told me in the car to remember to buy a donut from the cafeteria because apparently it tasted really good. And then I went to math class and I got a lot of math formulas got shoved into my brain. And then I went to physics class and I got Lenz's law and electromagnetic induction and random theories shoved into my brain as well. And then I went to lunch and I met my friends and they gave me this huge list of movies to remember to watch over the weekend. And the day went on and on and on, and in the end my brain ended up looking something like this. This, my friend, is what a scatterbrain looks like. So, and each dot is a file or something that you put in your brain to remember. Sometimes they go in and sometimes they don't. So that got me thinking, how do you make these files stick in your brain, the ones that are actually required? And I was able to condense it down into 3 main points. Sequence, association, and iteration. What does it mean? Big words. So sequence is when the things you remember follow a pattern, a logical pattern that your brain can pick up. And association is when the things you remember you relate it to something striking or memorable. And iteration is when you repeat it enough times so that it gets engraved into your memory. And I realized it was a combination of these 3 that you need to make something stick in your brain. So, for example, if you hear a song for the very first time, you associate it with the famous singer, or the topic of the song is something related to your own life. And the song may follow a story, like the lyrics may follow a story. And the music video might be really memorable. And if you repeat it over and over again, it gets stuck in your brain automatically. That's why when I go like, hello, can you hear me? Half the people I bet in this room can sing along. Or when I say the word frozen, you imagine this blonde girl in a blue dress going like, let it go, let it go. Your brain is immediately able to pick up that specific file and display it at the right moment. So how do we apply that to the things that we require to remember? Well, it's the same thing, 3 rules. Actually, we've been applying it throughout history. Before writing, there was the oral tradition where things were passed down through songs or hymns. And today, we have things like the periodic table song. In fact, the easiest way to get a kindergartner who has the basic brain, the easiest way to get them to remember something is through nursery rhymes. If it's follows a sequence, can be associated with something interesting, and is repeated enough times, it'll automatically get stuck in their brain. The first time I remember I was introduced to memory techniques in general was when I was in 6th grade. I was going through this phase where I had somehow gotten it into my head that I could not continue living unless I learned Japanese. So I went on a rampage, downloading a million apps onto my tablet, 1 for kanji, 3 for grammar, and God knows what else. The point was, I was crazy about Japanese. So I remember this time I was in the kitchen with my mom, who was cooking, and I had my tablet in my hand, and I was trying to remember the Japanese words 1 to 10, the numbers. Actually, this had been going on for the entire week, me marching up and down the house, droning on and on like a mantra, the words that made absolutely no sense to me, trying to engrave it into my head, but all in vain. But I wasn't going to give up that easy, so there I was in the kitchen with my poor mother who had suffered all week, and I was trying to remember these 10 numbers. And then at one point, my mother gently interrupted me and she said, "Why don't you make a story out of it?" And I was like, how the heck am I supposed to make a story out of this? I've been studying Japanese, but I've been trying to study Japanese, but that doesn't necessarily mean these illogical sequence of words makes any sense to me. And she was like, okay, well, look at it this way. 1 is ichi, and 2 is ni. Together, they sound like an ichi-ni. And I was like, oh, that's pretty good. And I went off on my own, and I made my own story. And it goes something like this. Once upon a time, there was a girl. Give me a name. Not random name for a girl. Meg. Okay. There was a girl named Meg, and she had a very itchy knee. That day was a very sunny day. So she was feeling super, super sleepy, and she began to yawn a lot. So to get herself to wake up, she decided that she would go outside and play. So she went outside, and she found some rocks, and she began playing with them. But then, suddenly, she decided, Nana, I gotta stop, because it had suddenly started raining. And she had caught a cold, and she started sneezing, going like, hachi. So she went to the nearest shop to find shelter, but when she got there, there was a super long queue. But the shop owner, who was this Jewish guy, was really nice, and he let her go inside the shop. The end of the story. It's a completely illogical story. It might not even be that interesting, and it's super weird. But that's what made it stick in my brain. It followed a sequence. I was able to associate each word with an action or a similar sounding word. And if I iterated enough times in my head, it automatically gets stuck there. So I thought this technique was really good, and I started applying it a lot in class, like econ class or history class, where I had to remember long lists and things like that. But outside, where I had to remember things like my bottle or not leaving my calculator behind, things like that, this method was not as effective. So in class, I was excelling, but outside, I was still a scatterbrain, a mess. So it went on like this for a while until in junior high, the BBC Sherlock Holmes TV show came out. How many of you have watched it? It's a pretty good show. For those of you who haven't watched it, the story revolves around this highly antisocial detective guy named Sherlock, who had the one thing I had always wanted: an awesome memory. He called it his mind palace. He used to do this thing where he would close his eyes, and then after a few minutes, he would come out with the exact time, date, and place where a murder took place 20 years ago or something like that. And I was like, oh my God, I'm in junior high. I'm just like, oh my God, I want to do that. So I immediately went on the internet and I did a lot of research, and I realized this mind palace is not a magic trick, but in fact, a real memory technique called method of loci. it uses something called spatial memory, which is your ability to remember geographical spaces in detail. So, for example, you know every nook and cranny in your room, or maybe something bigger. You know all the roads in your area, like super detailed. And you associate each of these places with an object you want to remember. So I was like, wow, I'm going to put this to immediate use. And at that point of time, my main problem was being unable to remember things I carried with me, for example, like my calculator or my pencil case or my bottle. So I chose to put this into action. So what I used to do was, every day, at the end of the day, I would take a walk around school in my head. What do I mean by that? Well, I don't know every nook and cranny of this school, but I do know the rooms and their general location. So what I did was I associated each room with an object that I had to remember. So for example, I would start my day by going to my homeroom, where we have to go to get our attendance checked. And a thing that I used to lose in my homeroom a lot, or leave behind in my homeroom, was my pencil case. So I associated my homeroom with the pencil case. After that, I would go to math class, and so I associated math class with the calculator. After that, I used to go to the ICT, and I used to lose my USB a lot, so I would associate with the ICT. And my bottle, I used to associate it with the girls' bathroom. Why? Because, well, my bottle I used to lose all around school, but one thing I could be sure of is that the cleaner stuff would find it, and they would keep it in their cabinet, which was in the girls' bathroom. So in my head every day, I would do my rounds, go to homeroom, check if I've lost my pencil case, nope. Go to math room, check if I've lost the calculator, then go to the ICT, and then the girls' bathroom. This is just a condensed example. There are obviously a lot more things, but this is one way of putting it to use. So in that way, problem solved. So let's rewind back to the future. Hello, my name is Trishna. I am 17 years old, and I can say with a little bit of confidence that my memory is far more organized than it used to be. Well, it's not 100% foolproof, but I can say with confidence that I will never be asking myself this question again. The end.